Peter Johnson, at 38 years old, had seen his fair share of suffering as a police officer in Charlotte, North Carolina. He dealt with difficult crimes, but there was something particularly heart-wrenching about cases involving children. It was a hot summer afternoon when he received the call that would change his life forever. "Peter, you need to come to the shelter," said his colleague, social worker Clara. "We have a situation here. 6 girls, all black, abandoned and alone. They're just babies, Peter." Clara's voice carried a pain that Peter knew all too well, a pain that came from witnessing the vulnerability of childhood being destroyed by neglect. He hung up the phone and headed toward the shelter, feeling a growing anguish in his chest. When he arrived, Clara greeted him and led him to a small room where the 6 girls were sitting. They were tiny, ages ranging from 2 to 6, and they're scared. Lost looks hit him like a punch to the gut. They have nowhere to go, no relatives, no interested adopters. "We've made all the possible contacts," Clara explained, her voice full of resignation. Peter watched the girls in silence. They sat on a worn-out sofa, hands clasped on their knees, trying to comfort each other in an unfamiliar environment. "How many chances do you think they have of being adopted?" Peter asked, already knowing the answer. "Unfortunately, few. If they aren't adopted soon, they'll end up growing up in the system," Clara said sadly. Peter felt something shift inside him, a sense of duty he had never experienced before. He looked again at the girls. They needed someone. They needed a home. "I'll take them home," Peter said, his voice firm. Clara looked at him, incredulous. "Peter, are you sure? This is a huge responsibility. You're a single man. 6 kids? And besides, they're all black. The world won't be kind to that situation." He nodded. "I know it won't be easy, but I can't leave them here. I won't leave them." Clara studied him for a moment before nodding. "You have a big heart, Peter. I just hope you know what you're getting into." As Peter signed the initial paperwork for the adoption, the girls watched him, still silent and unsure. One of them, the oldest at 6 years old, finally stepped forward. "Are you going to take care of us?" she asked in a soft voice full of hope. Peter knelt down to her level, placing his hands on her shoulders. "I will take care of you. I promise." What Peter didn't yet know was that that promise would change his life, and theirs, forever. In the following weeks, Peter Johnson began to face the reality of his decision. Adopting 6 girls at once was not only uncommon, it was nearly unheard of. He spent hours in meetings with social workers, lawyers, and child psychologists, each more concerned than the last. "You're a single man, Peter. And white," said his lawyer, Sarah, from the adoption department. "Society won't be kind to you. Do you think you're prepared for the implications of raising 6 black girls?" Peter sighed. He heard this from all sides, friends, co-workers, even his own family. He knew there was a hard truth in that observation, but he also believed that love transcended any barrier. "I didn't choose their skin color. I chose to give them a family. That's what matters." He looked directly at Sarah, determined. "These girls deserve a chance, and if no one else is going to do it, then I will." Sarah hesitated for a moment, leaning forward in her chair. "Are you sure? This is going to change your life permanently." Peter smiled, a light but sincere smile. "It already has. I can't imagine letting them go back into the system. They need me, and I'll do whatever it takes." The bureaucratic journey to formalize the adoption was fraught with obstacles. Besides being a single man, Peter's job as a police officer in a dangerous field didn't help the situation. And there was the ever-present issue of race, lurking just beneath the surface, even if no one spoke about it directly. One afternoon, after another visit with the adoption officials, Peter returned to the shelter. The girls were outside, playing together. They were small and fragile, but their smiles were beginning to emerge slowly, like tiny lights flickering in the dark. The oldest, Maya, ran up to him when she saw him enter. "Hi, Peter." She still didn't call him Dad, and he wasn't forcing it. He knew that would take time. "Hey, Maya, how are you and your sisters doing?" he asked, smiling as he saw her looking more confident. Maya looked at him seriously. "Are we really going to live with you? All of us?" Peter knelt to her level, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Yes, you are. I'm going to be your dad, and you'll have a real home." It won't be easy, Maya, but we'll be together. She blinked a few times, absorbing those words. And you won't give up on us? Like the others? I promise I'll never give up on you, Peter said firmly, looking directly into her eyes, wanting her to believe it with all her heart. I know it seems hard now, but we'll get through this together. Maya bit her lip and, for the first time, stepped forward to hug him. Peter felt the small body tremble slightly against his, and his heart tightened with the weight of the responsibility he was taking on. As time went on, he began to realize that, in addition to the obvious challenges of being a single dad, he would also have to face the disapproving looks from others. Soon after taking the girls for a medical checkup, a nurse looked at him with suspicion. "Are these girls yours?" she asked, trying to hide her incredulity. Peter just smiled. "Yes, they're my daughters. All 6 of them." The nurse's gaze didn't escape the girls, especially Maya, who, already sensitive to the world around her, began to understand that her new life would bring challenges beyond her imagination. Even with the moments of doubt and judgment, Peter stood firm. He knew the road ahead would be long, but he believed that love and patience would be enough. As the weeks passed, the adoption was nearing its conclusion. Each visit from the social workers was more tense than the last, until the day Clara showed up with the final documents. "Peter," she said with a gentle smile, handing him the papers. "Congratulations, they are officially yours." He took the papers, his hands slightly trembling. "I knew it would happen, but it's still surreal." Clara nodded, watching the girls, who were playing carefree. "You've done something that most people would never have the courage to do, Peter. Now the hardest part begins." Peter looked at his daughters, a mix of pride and nervousness swelling in his chest. "I know, Clara, but we'll make it work. I'm not alone in this." He was certain that despite the obstacles, his new family was about to embark on a journey filled with challenges, but also with moments of love and triumph. The future was still uncertain, but he knew he had never made a decision that felt so right in his life. Peter Johnson opened the door to his home in Charlotte, North Carolina, pausing for a moment to look at the space that was now supposed to accommodate 6 girls. The house seemed small for such a big family. He knew nothing would be easy, but as he watched the 6 girls enter, filled with curiosity and a bit of fear, a new determination grew in his chest. The girls stood in silence, each clutching their backpacks with the few belongings they had, looking around as if they still couldn't believe this was their new home. Maya, the oldest, walked ahead, leading the group like a protective sister. The others followed closely, unsure of what to expect. "So, what do you all think?" Peter tried to break the ice, smiling encouragingly. Maya, always the spokesperson for the group, answered first. "It's big." Peter chuckled softly. "It's going to feel smaller, you'll see, especially with 6 of you running around." The girls continued to explore in silence, but there was a tension in the air. Peter could feel that as much as he wanted to, creating a home environment for them wouldn't be easy. He took them upstairs to show them their new rooms, each one painted in bright colors, filled with toys and books. "This will be your room, Maya," he said, opening the door to a room adorned with a mural of a sunset. "And you can decorate it however you want." Maya stepped inside, her eyes wide with wonder. "Really? I can make it mine?" "Absolutely. This is your space. Make it feel like home." The other girls started to come in, each with a mixture of excitement and hesitation. "This is our house now?" one of the younger girls asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, it is," Peter confirmed, his heart swelling with pride. "It's our house, and we're going to fill it with laughter and love." Maya turned to him, her expression serious. "And you'll really stay? You won't leave like the others?" Peter knelt down, looking her in the eyes. "I will stay. I'm not going anywhere. I promise." And as the girls began to explore their new home, Peter felt a sense of hope wash over him. The journey ahead would be tough, but together they would. Upstairs, where 2 rooms were already ready, decorated in soft colors with simple yet cozy furniture. "You'll be sharing these 2 rooms," he explained. "You can decide who will stay in which. If you want to change anything, we can talk about it and make it the way you like." The girls looked at the beds, but no one said a word. Finally, one of the youngest, Naomi, only 4 years old, looked up at Peter with wide eyes. "Is this bed just for me?" she asked, almost in disbelief. Peter smiled, kneeling down to be at Naomi's level. "Yes, it's yours, and no one will take it from you." She glanced back at the bed, touching the blanket as if it were something precious. The other girls were equally quiet, absorbing the new environment. Each of them had lived in shelters for so long that the idea of having something just for them seemed almost impossible. Maya broke the silence again. "We've never had a place like this. That was ours." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Peter nodded, trying to control the emotion in his voice. "Well, now you do. And I'll do everything I can to make this place a home for you." After a few moments, he decided to give them space to settle in. "I'll prepare dinner. You can get comfortable and explore the rest of the house. If you need anything, just let me know." As Peter went downstairs, he took a deep breath, trying to absorb the magnitude of what was happening. He wasn't particularly emotional, but he knew he was dealing with something monumental. He wasn't just adopting children. He was trying to repair shattered lives, offering them a new chance. While preparing dinner, he heard the soft sounds of the girls exploring the house. Some whispers, quiet laughter. It was a start, albeit a small one. He knew there was much work ahead. At dinner time, they all gathered around the table. Peter made something simple, macaroni and cheese with grilled chicken, a meal he thought they might enjoy. The girls sat in silence, as if unsure how to act at a family dinner table. "You can eat as much as you want, okay?" Peter said with a smile, trying to ease the tension. Maya watched everything closely, ever cautious. "Thank you," she murmured, taking a small portion for herself. The others followed Maya's lead, and dinner was quiet, albeit somewhat reserved. Time spent in shelters and temporary homes had taught the girls to be wary, not to trust too quickly. Peter understood this and didn't push. He knew that, in time, they would open up. After dinner, he helped them get ready for bed. The younger ones were exhausted, but there was an uneasiness in their eyes. When Peter leaned down to adjust Naomi's blankets, she held onto his hand, looking up at him with a serious expression for someone so young. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Naomi asked. Peter's heart tightened. "Of course I will, Naomi. I'll be here every day." She nodded, still not letting go of his hand. "Okay, good night, Peter." "Good night, sweetheart," he replied softly, squeezing her hand before leaving the room. At the end of the night, when all were asleep, Peter sat on the living room couch, exhausted but satisfied. He looked around his house, now more alive than it had ever been. Despite the silence, he could feel the presence of the girls like a sweet weight in his life. The journey was just beginning, and he knew there would be challenges ahead. With time, he believed they would understand that this was not just a house, but a home. Peter strolled slowly down the street, holding Naomi's tiny hand while the other girls ran ahead, laughing and exploring the local park. It was a Sunday afternoon, and he had finally managed to carve out some free time to take the girls out. However, even with the joy in the air, he felt the stares. It was impossible not to notice. He sensed the eyes of people on his back, watching with curiosity but also with a hint of disdain. A white man, alone, with 6 black girls. It was something that sparked both curiosity and prejudice in Charlotte. As the girls played on the swings, Peter noticed a woman next to the playground staring intently at him. She was with 2 small children, but her eyes never left Peter and the girls. For a moment, he considered ignoring her, but soon she approached. "Are those your children?" the woman asked, her face displaying a mix of confusion. Peter nodded calmly. "Yes, they're my daughters." The woman raised her eyebrows. "But all of them? Did you adopt them?" She seemed unable to hide her astonishment. "Yes, all of them," Peter replied with a light smile, trying to maintain his composure. She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "And how do you handle that? I mean, isn't it difficult? Being a white man raising black children?" Peter straightened up, looking directly into her eyes. "What matters is the love I offer them. I don't see color when it comes to family. I only see my daughters." The woman fell silent, seeming a bit taken aback by Peter's response, but soon averted her gaze, mumbling something about needing to take care of her kids. Peter sighed as she walked away, knowing that this wouldn't be the last time he faced such questions or judgments. Later, when the girls were tired and ready to head home, Peter noticed that Maya, the oldest, seemed quieter than usual. On the drive back, she finally broke the silence. "Dad." She now called him that, though the words still sounded a bit shy on her tongue. "People look at us because we're different, right?" Peter glanced at her through the rearview mirror, surprised by the direct question. He stopped the car at a red light and looked at Maya through the mirror. "Yes, sweetheart, some people look. But that doesn't mean we're any less than any other family." Maya crossed her arms, pondering his words. "They look because you're white and we're black." "Yes, and some people don't understand that skin color doesn't define who we are or the love we have for each other. But I promise you, what matters is what happens here," he said, pointing to his heart. "Our hearts and what we feel for each other is what really counts." The other girls, listening to the conversation, fell silent. Even Naomi, who usually had a million questions, seemed to be absorbing what Peter was saying. "But why can't people see that?" Maya pressed, her voice heavy with precocious wisdom. Peter drove again, reflecting on her question. "Because some people have been taught to think that skin color is what matters most. But we know the truth, right? We know we're a family, and that's what's most important. The rest, we face together." Maya fell quiet, but Peter could see that she was processing his words. The truth was he couldn't protect them from everything. He couldn't stop people from looking at them like they were anomalies. But he could guarantee that inside his house, inside their family, they would always feel loved and safe. When they arrived home, the girls dashed inside, eager to rest after a long day. Peter lingered for a moment in the car, looking at the open door of the house and reflecting on the challenges ahead. Raising 6 black girls in a racially divided society would be a path filled with obstacles, but he was ready. He had already made a choice. These girls were his daughters, and he would do everything to protect and love them, no matter what the outside world thought. Inside, as he helped Naomi take off her shoes, the little girl looked up at him with her big, curious eyes. "Why did that lady at the park stare at us so much?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with innocence. Peter smiled and picked her up. "Because sometimes people don't understand what's different. But you know what, Naomi? We don't need to worry about what people think. What matters is how we feel, and I love you more than anything." She beamed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I love you too, Daddy." As Peter tucked her into bed that night, he knew many challenges lay ahead, but he also knew that the love they shared would be enough to face anything. The sound of laughter echoed through Peter Johnson's house, a sound he hadn't imagined being a part of his life for many years. The girls were racing to the kitchen, competing to see who would help Peter make dinner first. He had promised to cook spaghetti, their favorite. "I'm first," shouted Naomi, the youngest, as she tried to wriggle past her older sisters. "Not so fast, little one." Maya, always the protective one, grabbed her around the waist and lifted her up, laughing, while the others crowded around the counter. Peter smiled, watching the scene with a mix of pride and admiration. He knew that raising 6 girls would never be easy, but moments like this made all the challenges worthwhile. The girls had grown so much over the years, not just in height, but in confidence and happiness. Each of them had found her own space in the house, transforming what once seemed like a group of scared children into a true family. Okay, let's organize this mess," Peter said, raising his hands for silence. "Naomi, you're in charge of stirring the sauce. Maya, you can prepare the pasta. The rest of you, I want you to set the table. No fighting, please." The girls dispersed quickly, giggling as they tackled their tasks. There was a natural harmony in that house, something Peter had never imagined possible when he first adopted the girls. In the beginning, he had feared that the trauma of abandonment would be something they could never fully overcome. But over time, the love he poured into them, day after day, began to heal those wounds. After dinner, the girls gathered in the living room to watch a movie. It was a Sunday tradition. Naomi snuggled into Peter's lap, while the other girls piled around him on the couch. As the movie started, Peter looked around the room and couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed. He had never imagined that a single man like him with a grueling career as a police officer, would be the father of 6 girls. But there they were, his daughters, calling him Dad and trusting him with everything. "Dad, do you think one day we'll have a bigger house? One where we can each have our own room?" Naomi asked, her eyes already heavy with sleep as she lifted her face to him. Peter smiled. "Maybe, sweetheart. Let's see what the future holds. But no matter how big the house is, what really matters is that we're all together." Maya, listening intently from the other side of the couch, added, "Yeah, and it doesn't matter what people outside say about us, right?" Peter leaned forward, looking into the eyes of all his daughters. "Exactly. The only thing that matters is what we feel here inside," he said, tapping his chest with his hand. "We are a family, and no one can take that away from us." The girls nodded in unison, seeming to understand every word. Peter had always made it a point to emphasize that, despite the suspicious glances they received on the street or the invasive questions from strangers, what mattered most was the love they shared. Later that night, after all the girls had gone to bed, Peter sat alone in the living room, reflecting on his journey up to that point. Physical and emotional exhaustion often hit him, but the moments of joy he shared with his daughters made him feel rewarded. He thought about the difficulties the girls would face in the future, the racism, the prejudices, the internal struggles. But he also knew that with the love they shared, they would be ready to overcome any obstacle. That night, as Peter closed his eyes to rest, he knew that there was something special about those 6 girls. They had transformed him just as much as he had transformed their lives. And the bond they had built was unbreakable, a bond of love that would transcend all the challenges still to come. Years went by, and the 6 girls were growing up fast. The dolls and hide-and-seek games had been replaced by mirrors full of lipstick and plans for the future. Changes were evident every day, but with adolescence came new challenges Peter wasn't fully prepared to face. That morning, Peter was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee, when he heard a loud thud coming from upstairs, followed by shouts. He sighed, already imagining a new argument was about to erupt. As he climbed the stairs, he found Maya and Kiera, both with flushed faces from anger, arguing in the hallway. "You don't get to tell me what to do," Kiera shouted, her fists clenched. Maya crossed her arms, her voice filled with frustration. "I'm just trying to help you. You're hanging out with guys who don't even respect you, Kiera. They make racist jokes, and you act like you don't care." "Enough," Peter intervened, his voice firm yet calm. "What's going on here?" Maya turned to him, trying to hold back tears. "Kiera is dating a group of boys who just make fun of her for being black. They make racist jokes, and she pretends it doesn't bother her." Peter looked at Kiera, who turned her face away, avoiding her father's gaze. "Is this true, Kiera?" She shrugged, her face stubborn. "They're just joking. I can handle it." Peter sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the moment. He knew this kind of situation would arise eventually, but he never thought it would happen so soon. He crouched down in front of Kiera, softening his voice. "Listen, sweetheart. There's nothing funny about someone disrespecting who you are. You deserve to be treated with dignity, always." "But, Dad," Kiera protested, "if I don't let it slide, they'll think I'm weak, that I can't take a joke." "That's not a joke, Kiera," Peter replied firmly. "It's racism, and it's not something you should accept from anyone, especially not from people you call friends." Kiera fell silent for a moment, her face softening as the reality of his words began to sink in. Peter placed his hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than they are, and you're not alone. Your sisters and I will always be here for you." Maya stepped closer, her anger replaced by concern. "I just want you to see your worth, Kiera. We love you." Kiera, visibly moved, nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I just don't want people to think I'm different because of my color." Peter hugged her tightly. "But you are different, and that's beautiful. Never let anyone take that away from you." That night, as the girls were in their rooms, Peter sat in the living room, reflecting on the day. He knew this battle would be constant. Raising 6 black girls in a society still scarred by deep-rooted racism was something he had always known he would face, but it was hard to see his daughters suffering from something he couldn't change. As he lost himself in thought, The living room door opened, and Maya walked in. "Dad, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Maya. What's up?" She sat down beside him on the couch, nervously fiddling with her hands. "I just wanted to thank you for today. I know it's not easy for you to deal with these things. I mean, you're white and we're black. Sometimes, I feel like you try so hard to understand what we go through." Peter looked her in the eyes, realizing the depth of what she was saying. "Maya, I know there are things I'll never fully understand, but that doesn't mean I'm not here for you. I care, and I want to do my best to ensure you have all the support you need, even when the world outside doesn't seem fair." Maya nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I know, Dad, and we love you for that. You've never made us feel different, like society does, and that means a lot." Peter pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of the responsibility he carried, but also the deep love that united his family. "You are my daughters, Maya. No matter what happens outside, here, you will always be loved and respected." She smiled, hugging him back. "I know that, and it gives us strength." That night marked a turning point for Peter. He understood that the difficulties would continue, but he also knew that the bond he had created with his daughters would be the solid foundation for facing them. The world could be cruel, but inside that house, love, respect, and acceptance would always be unbreakable. As the years passed and the girls continued to grow and follow their own paths, Peter began to feel the toll of the sacrifices he had made over the years. He was now 58 years old, and his body was no longer what it used to be. The sleepless nights, the constant worries, and the challenges of raising 6 daughters alone were taking their toll. He rarely admitted it, but the exhaustion was becoming unbearable. One evening, after a long day at work, Peter sat heavily on the couch, rubbing his shoulders with a visible look of pain. The girls, now all in their 20s, noticed the change in his demeanor. He seemed more tired than ever, his posture hunched, and his face lined with deep wrinkles of exhaustion. "Dad, are you okay?" asked Kiera, the most observant of the sisters, as she approached him. Peter smiled at her, trying to mask his discomfort. "I'm fine, just a bit tired." "Dad, this isn't just tiredness," insisted Maya, who had entered the room just then. "We've noticed you've been having back pain for months, and you've been coughing more lately." Peter sighed, knowing he could no longer hide it. He had always been the pillar of strength for his daughters, but now he felt vulnerable, and it bothered him. "It's nothing, girls. I'm just getting older, like everyone else." The sisters exchanged worried glances. They knew Peter wasn't one to complain, which made the situation even more alarming. "Dad, why don't you go to the doctor? Just to get checked out," suggested Kiera, sitting down next to him and placing her hand on his shoulder. "We're worried about you." "That's right, Dad," agreed Jasmine, who had come down the stairs. "You've taken care of us for so long. Now it's our turn to take care of you." Peter chuckled softly, touched by his daughter's concern but still reluctant to show weakness. "I appreciate the worry, but you have your own lives to live. You don't need to worry about me." "Of course we do," replied Maya, her voice heavy with emotion. "You gave us everything. When no one else believed in us, you were there. Now we want to do the same for you." Peter's heart tightened with their affection. He had always known he raised strong and kind daughters, but seeing how much they cared for him moved him deeply. "I promise I'll go to the doctor, okay? Just to make sure everything's fine." "It's not just that," Maya continued. "You need to start thinking about resting more, about taking care of yourself. We can't lose you, Dad." Peter nodded, feeling a pang of guilt. He knew he had dedicated himself entirely to his daughters, often neglecting his own well-being, but he never wanted to worry them. "I'll do it. I promise." In the following days, Peter finally made an appointment. However, the news wasn't what he had expected. The doctor diagnosed him with a chronic lung condition, a result of years of exposure to stressful situations and unhealthy work environments. He would need ongoing treatment and possibly reduce his activities to take care of his health. When he returned home, the sisters were gathered, waiting for news. He sat down at the kitchen table, his expression more serious than usual. "What did the doctor say?" Jasmine asked, her heart racing. Peter took a deep breath before responding. "He said I need to slow down. I have a lung condition that will require ongoing treatment." The sisters fell silent, absorbing the gravity of the situation. It was Maya who broke the silence. "We're going to help you, Dad. You don't have to face this alone." "Exactly," added Kiera. "You've always been there for us. Now it's our turn to be there for you." Peter looked at his daughters, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. He never wanted to be a burden to them, but now he realized that the love he had given them was being returned in ways he never imagined. "I never wanted you girls to have to take care of me," he said softly, "but I'm grateful to have such amazing daughters." Maya took Peter's hand, and the other sisters followed suit, forming a circle of support around him. "Dad, you taught us that family comes first. That applies to you too. No matter what happens, we'll always be in this together." Peter smiled, tears in his eyes. "You all mean everything to me, and I'm going to fight to be okay for you." The girls knew the road ahead would be tough, but they also knew that just as Peter had fought for them throughout their lives, they would fight for him with the same strength and love, together as they always had been. The 6 sisters sat in the living room of the house they had grown up in, around the dining table they had shared with Peter so many times. The atmosphere was filled with concern, but also determination. Peter was becoming increasingly frail, and his health was a constant shadow in their minds. They knew he would never stop fighting for them, but now it was their turn to repay everything he had done. "We have to do something," Maya said, always the first to take the initiative. "Dad sacrificed everything for us. We can't just watch him deteriorate without showing him how much he means to us." Jasmine, the calmest of the group, looked at her sisters and nodded. "He never asked for anything in return, and look what he did. He gave us a life. We are who we are because of him." Kiera, the most practical and organized, enthusiastically supported the idea. "We need to show Dad that everything he did wasn't in vain, that he left a legacy, something that will continue helping other kids, just like he helped us." "But how?" asked Naomi, the most emotional sister. "How can we do that in a way that really shows him how much he changed our lives?" There was a brief silence as they all thought, until Ayana, the most introverted sister, who always observed quietly before speaking, offered her idea: a foundation. An organization to help abandoned children, like we were. Something that reflects Dad's generous heart. All of the sisters' eyes lit up at the suggestion. The idea quickly began to take shape in their minds. "That's perfect," said Kiera, already considering the details. "A foundation that offers support to adoptive parents, especially those who, like Dad, want to adopt kids that are often overlooked by the system. We can provide guidance, emotional support, and even financial assistance." Maya agreed, her mind already racing. "We could call it the Peter Johnson Foundation. It would be a perfect tribute to the man who gave us everything. Plus, we can ensure he sees the impact of his life before it's too late. He always told us that the greatest wealth he had was seeing us grow up happy," added Jasmine. "Can you imagine how he'll feel knowing we're continuing what he started?" "That's it," exclaimed Naomi, emotional. "The Peter Johnson Foundation will ensure that his legacy lives on forever." With the idea in hand, the sisters set to work carefully planning everything. They knew time was crucial, as Peter's health was declining rapidly, and they wanted to surprise him while he could still appreciate the gesture. In the days that followed, the 6 sisters worked tirelessly. They secured help from lawyers, accountants, and other professionals to structure the foundation. Kiera took charge of logistics and paperwork. Maya focused on fundraising and partnerships with local NGOs. Jasmine and Naomi handled the emotional aspect, crafting the foundation's purpose and the outreach it would have, while Ayana and Aisha worked on creating the website and social media presence. Throughout this process, Peter had no idea what was happening. He spent most days resting, battling fatigue and pain, and thought his daughters were just busy with their own lives. But one evening, while the sisters held a final meeting at home, he overheard fragments of their conversation. "Do you think Dad will like it? Will he get emotional?" Naomi asked softly. Peter, hearing his name, moved closer to the room and leaned against the door. He frowned, curious, but didn't want to interrupt. He knew his girls were up to something, but the surprise would be revealed soon. Days later, the moment arrived. The sisters organized a special dinner at home, inviting some of Peter's close friends and allies of the girls, all complicit in the surprise they were about to unveil. Peter, although surprised by the number of people, accepted the invitation without suspecting anything. "What's this dinner all about, girls?" he asked, smiling as he took a seat at the table. Maya exchanged glances with her sisters and, with a nod, stood up. "Dad, we have something very important to tell you." Peter furrowed his brow, curious. "Oh, really? What trouble have you gotten into this time?" Kiera also rose, holding an envelope in her hands. "Dad, you've given us everything. You've given us a life, love, and, more importantly, the chance to be a family. We wanted to find a way to show you just how grateful we are for everything you've done for us." Jasmine smiled and stepped closer, while Naomi reached out her hand to Peter. "Today, we want to introduce you to the Peter Johnson Foundation," Jasmine said, her voice filled with emotion. "It's a foundation we created to help abandoned children, just like we were. We're going to support foster parents and ensure more children find the safety and love that you gave us." Peter looked from one daughter to the other, his eyes misty. "What? You all did this?" "For me." "For you," Ayana said. "And for all the children who still need a home like the one you gave us." Tears finally escaped Peter as he embraced his daughters, one by one. I don't know what to say. This is more than I could ever dream of. I just did what any father would do." "You did more than that, Dad," Kiera said, holding his hand tightly. "And now, your legacy will continue. Through every child you help with this foundation." Peter was too emotional to speak. He looked around the room, seeing the love he had created, not just in his daughters but in the community around them. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel pride, not for what he had done, but for what his daughters had become. The Peter Johnson Foundation was living proof that Peter's sacrifices had been rewarded in a way he had never imagined. The days that followed the foundation's creation were filled with emotion and gratitude. Peter felt deeply touched by his daughter's gesture and, in a way, revitalized by the lasting impact his life would now have on the future of many children. However, his health, which had been deteriorating slowly, began to worsen rapidly. He now spent most days at home, resting in a chair in the living room, surrounded by photos of his daughters and the moments of the life they had built together. His steps, once firm and decisive, had become heavy and painful, and his daughters, increasingly worried, tried their best to care for him. One afternoon, Jasmine entered the room and saw Peter sitting, staring out the window with a distant expression. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, moving closer and kneeling beside the chair. Peter tried to smile, but fatigue was evident in his eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a bit tired." Jasmine observed him for a moment, knowing there was more to it. She took his hand and, in a gentle tone, asked, "Have you seen the doctor this week? I know you have an appointment tomorrow." Peter sighed. "I didn't go." "It doesn't make sense, Jasmine. I know what they're going to say. My body is just wearing down." "But you have to go," she insisted, her voice trembling. "We need to know what's really going on and see if there's anything we can do to help you." "I don't want you to worry about me," he said, looking into his daughter's eyes. "You all have the foundation, your own lives, and I've lived a full life, Jasmine. I've done what I wanted, and now I have all of you here, together." Jasmine swallowed her tears, trying not to show just how worried she was. "Dad, we came together because of you, and what we want more than anything is for you to stay with us for a lot longer." The other sisters, overhearing the conversation, quietly entered the room. Maya, always the leader, was the first to speak. "Jasmine's right. You've always taught us to fight, to never give up. Now it's our turn to fight for you." Kiera, who always had something practical to say, stepped closer with an unusual seriousness. "Dad, we need to know what the doctors have to say. If there's anything we can do to help, we have to try." Peter looked at each of them, their hearts open and vulnerable. He knew they were worried, and he felt the weight of responsibility not to cause them pain. But at the same time, his body was growing weaker, and he knew time wasn't on his side. "I promise I'll go," he finally said with a tired smile. "Tomorrow, I'll see the doctor. But I want you to understand that, No matter what happens, I'm at peace. You are the reason for my peace. The next morning, Peter kept his promise and went to the doctor's appointment, accompanied by Maya and Kiera. The doctor, a middle-aged man with a serious demeanor, reviewed Peter's recent tests and shook his head with concern. The news isn't good, he began, his tone careful. Peter's condition is progressing quickly, and the treatment we've been doing is no longer effective. How long? Maya asked directly, gripping her father's hand tightly. The doctor sighed. It's hard to say precisely, but we're talking about months, not years. Peter closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the news. He felt Maya's and Kiera's grip tightening on his hand, and he opened his eyes to look at his daughters. I was expecting something like this, he said calmly. I've lived much longer than I ever imagined. I'm ready. His daughters, though trying to be strong, couldn't hide the impact of the doctor's words. They left the office in silence, supporting Peter as he walked slowly to the car. That night, all 6 sisters gathered at home to discuss the future. The atmosphere was heavy, but there was also a silent determination among them. They knew Peter's time was running out, and they needed to make the most of every moment with him. In the following weeks, Peter's health continued to decline. He spent more time in bed, and his daughters took turns caring for him. There were good days when he could talk and smile, and days when pain and fatigue kept him silent. However, at no point did Peter show regret or sadness. For him, every day with his daughters was a victory. One of those nights, while the sisters were gathered in the kitchen discussing the next steps for the foundation, Peter called for Jasmine, who was caring for him that evening. "Jasmine," he murmured, his voice weak, "I just wanted to say, I'm the luckiest man in the world to have you all. You've changed my life." Jasmine moved closer, holding his hand. "Dad, you're the one who changed our lives. Everything we've done and what we're doing now is because of you." Peter smiled, tired but genuine. "Promise me you'll keep the foundation going, that you'll continue helping those kids, just like I helped you." "I promise, Dad," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We'll carry on your legacy. We'll make sure what you started lives on forever." With that promise, Peter closed his eyes, knowing his mission was complete, and that the love he had instilled in his daughters would blossom for generations to come. The house was quiet that Sunday morning. Peter rested in the living room, wrapped in a blanket one of his daughters had given him. Time passed slowly for him, his days blending between physical pain and memories of the life he had lived. However, something felt different that day. He noticed his daughters bustling around the house, whispering to one another and exchanging knowing glances. They seemed to be planning something, but he didn't know what. As the afternoon sun began to fill the room, Maya entered with a smile on her face, her energy contained, as if she was holding a secret that was about to be revealed. "Dad, can you get up for a bit?" Maya asked, her voice gentle but eager. Peter looked at her with a curious expression. "Get up? Sure. But why? What are you all up to?" "Oh, you'll see. Just trust us," Jasmine said, stepping in right behind Maya with the same conspiratorial look. The sisters helped him to his feet and guided him to the backyard, where a large wooden table was set up, decorated with flowers and photos of special moments from their lives together. At the center, a sign read, "Peter Johnson Foundation, giving love and hope." Peter was paralyzed as he gazed at the scene before him. The air felt lighter, and the warmth of the sun on his skin soothed him, but nothing could have prepared his heart for what he was witnessing. "What is this?" he asked, looking at each of his daughters with tear-filled eyes. Maya stepped forward, a smile barely contained on her face. "Dad, we wanted to do something special, something that represents everything you've done for us in our lives. So, we created the Peter Johnson Foundation." Peter stood in stunned silence, feeling the weight of Maya's words. "Foundation with my name?" "Yes, Dad," Jasmine added, taking his hand. "It's a foundation to help abandoned children, especially Black children, just like you helped us. We want to give them what you gave us, a chance to have a family, to feel loved and protected." Peter's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and he looked at his daughters, one by one, recalling every struggle, every sleepless night, every moment when he questioned whether he was doing the right thing. I don't know what to say, he finally whispered. His voice choked with emotion. You really did this for me? Of course we did, Dad, Kiera said, hugging him tightly. You sacrificed so much for us. This is the least we can do to honor your life, to ensure that your legacy continues. Peter, who rarely found himself speechless, was now utterly at a loss for words. He shook his head as if trying to absorb the depth of their gesture. I never imagined. This is more than I could dream. You deserve this and so much more, said Amber, standing a little further away but wearing a gentle smile. This foundation isn't just about what you did for us, Dad. It's about what you mean to the world. You gave us love, hope, a family, and now other children will have the chance to feel the same. Peter ran his fingers over the plaque, his hands trembling, and turned to his daughters, his eyes filled with tears. I always knew you were special, but you've truly exceeded all my expectations. No, Maya said, placing her hand on his shoulder. You taught us to overcome everything, Dad. We're just following your example. As Peter absorbed it all, his daughters led him to the table where a small ceremony was set up. They had invited some special people who had been part of the family's journey, friends, former colleagues of Peter, and even some children who would benefit from the foundation. Jasmine stood up, holding a microphone. Today, we celebrate the man who gave us everything. A man who, without hesitation, put our lives before his own. This foundation is a reflection of what he represents: love, sacrifice, and above all, family. Thank you, Dad, for being our hero. Applause echoed through the backyard, and Peter, tears streaming down his face, felt enveloped by love. He never imagined he would live to see something like this, something that perfectly reflected the life he chose to lead. The pain in his body felt distant in that moment. His heart was full. As the daughters finished speaking and the event continued, Peter watched them. The world he lived in, with all its struggles and challenges, seemed brighter now. That moment was proof that what he had done for them, and for so many children, was the true measure of a life well lived. He turned to Maya, a weak but grateful smile on his face. I never imagined something like this was possible. You surprised me in ways I could never repay. Maya, tears in her eyes, simply shook her head. You don't have to repay us, Dad. You've already given us everything we needed. And there, in that moment, Peter felt that his mission in life was complete. The sun was setting over Charlotte, painting the sky a soft orange as Peter settled into his favorite chair in the living room. He looked at the photos of his daughters on the walls, each one capturing happy and memorable moments of their lives. There were smiles, laughter, and even some tears, but above all, there was love. A love that overcame challenges and created a united family. That night, the daughters gathered around him, each sharing their own stories and memories. Maya, always the most eloquent, began to talk about how Peter's support had helped shape them into the women they were. Dad, she started, her voice slightly choked. Remember that time when I didn't want to go to school because the kids were being cruel? You stood by me, telling me I was strong enough to face it all. Peter smiled as he recalled that day. How could I forget? You were so determined to give up, but I knew you had a light inside you. I just wanted you to see that too. Kiera, sitting to Peter's right, took his hand and said, and you never gave up on us, no matter what. You always encouraged us to be ourselves, to love who we are. That was crucial for us. It's true, Jasmine added, nodding. You taught us that being different is a strength, not a weakness. Without you, I don't know where we'd be. Peter looked at his daughters, feeling an overwhelming wave of emotion. You have no idea how much that means to me. You are the reason I kept fighting, even on the hardest days. Seeing each of you become who you are is my greatest pride. The room was filled with emotion, and the sisters exchanged glances, deciding it was time to open their hearts more deeply. Maya, always the leader, said, We know your health isn't good, Dad. And even though this is hard for us, we want you to know that we're here to take care of you, just like you took care of us. Yes, you don't have to go through this alone, Amber added. We're a family, and that means we're going to face everything together. Peter wiped away the tears streaming down his face, his expression a mixture of gratitude and sadness. You are everything I could have dreamed of in a family. I just want you to have a bright future, to realize your dreams. And we will, Dad, Kiera said, determination in her eyes. But we also want you to know that you're a vital part of that future. We're not going to let you leave our lives so soon. Peter's heart swelled at their words. He felt loved and safe, but he also knew he couldn't avoid the challenges ahead. Promise me you'll continue with the foundation. That's something I want to see grow. Helping other kids like you helped me. You can count on it, Dad, Maya replied with a smile. We'll do it in your honor. We'll make your legacy live on. At that moment, the daughters moved in closer and hugged him, forming a circle of love around him. Peter felt that, even amid the adversities, there was something truly special about his life. The love he had sown over the years was now blooming, taking deep and lasting roots. After the hug, Peter looked at his daughters and, with a gentle smile, said, "Remember, love is the most powerful force that exists. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." The daughters nodded, feeling the truth behind his words. The night continued with laughter and stories, and for a few moments, the worries of the outside world seemed distant. For Peter, those were the moments he would treasure forever in his heart. In that room, filled with love and life, he knew his legacy was not just the foundation created in his name, but the unconditional love he had nurtured in his daughters. A love that knew no boundaries and would spread through generations, continuing to make a difference in the lives of many children who, like them, deserved a second chance. The day of the launch event for the Peter Johnson Foundation had finally arrived. The community hall in Charlotte was adorned with colorful balloons and banners proclaiming, "Welcome to the Peter Johnson Foundation." The energy in the air was palpable, filled with anticipation and love. Peter, now visibly more fragile, watched from the back of the room, seated in a chair designed for his comfort. His daughters, all dressed elegantly, moved through the space, organizing the final details and greeting guests as they arrived for the special occasion. "Look, Dad," Maya exclaimed, waving at him as she approached. "Everyone is so excited. I've never seen so many people interested in helping." "It's wonderful to see this, dear," Peter replied, a nostalgic smile on his face. "I've always believed that the love we give comes back to us in ways we can't imagine." Kiera, who was helping distribute brochures about the foundation, interrupted, "Dad, are you ready to speak? Your testimony is really important to all of us. Everyone wants to hear about your journey." I don't know, girls," he said, looking at them with uncertainty. "What if I start to stutter or can't express everything I feel?" Amber, always confident, took the floor. "You just need to be yourself. Everyone here admires and respects you for what you've done for us and for so many other children. Just speak from the heart." Peter nodded slowly, his heart warming at their words. "Okay, I'll give it a try." As the hall began to fill up, the daughters prepared to present the event's agenda. Maya took the stage, looking at the audience with a sparkle in her eyes. "Thank you all for being here today. This foundation is dedicated to our dad, Peter Johnson, who gave us a second chance and taught us the importance of love and family." The audience applauded warmly, and Peter felt a wave of emotion. Seeing them reminded him of all the hardships they had faced together and how each of them had grown into strong, independent women. Next, it was Peter's turn to speak. He climbed onto the stage, leaning on a cane, and looked out at the crowd. The room fell silent, everyone eagerly awaiting his words. "I'm not very good at speeches," he began, a nervous smile on his face. "But I'd like to share something I've always believed. Love is the most powerful force there is. It connects us, strengthens us, and helps us overcome the toughest moments." He looked at his daughters, who were smiling proudly at him. "When I decided to adopt these 6 girls, I had no idea what to expect. But every challenge I faced was rewarded with laughter, love, and memories I'll cherish forever. These girls have taught me so much about life and the true meaning of being a family." One of the sisters, Jasmine, raised her hand. "Dad, you taught us that everyone deserves a chance, and that's why we created this foundation, to ensure that other kids, like us, have a home and a future." The room erupted in applause again. Peter felt emotional and proud. I'm just an ordinary man who's been lucky enough to love and be loved by you. May this foundation be a beacon of hope for those in need." After his speech, Peter was enveloped in a collective hug from his daughters, who could barely contain their emotions. The love in the air was palpable, and everyone in the room could feel the genuine connection between them. As the evening went on, many guests approached Peter to congratulate him and offer their support for the new foundation. The positive energy was contagious, and the sisters felt excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. "Dad, this is just the beginning," Maya said as she watched people interact. "We're only starting to make a difference. You've shown us that love can change lives." "Yeah," Kiera agreed, "and we'll always remember where we came from and who helped us get here." Peter smiled, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. He knew that, although his health was declining, his legacy would live on through his daughters and the foundation. The love he had given had created a lasting impact, and he was confident it would continue to inspire positive change in the lives of many children. So, in that illuminated hall, Peter looked at his daughters, feeling that everything he had done was worth it. He knew that despite the challenges they had faced, love would always prevail and the future was bright. With that certainty, he allowed himself to relax and enjoy that special moment, surrounded by the love of his family.